Nigel! Little buddy. Morning, Nigel. How Frisco Bale? Huckleberry! Hey, buddy. Come on. Zig! Oof. Not Zig. Hey, pretty. Hey, come here. Here. Come on. Oh, girl. How are you, Mare? Hey, Mare. There you go.
Every year when winter finally rolls around, even if I think I am fully prepared, it always takes me a few days to actually adjust. Last night, the forecast only called for about an inch of snow, and we got about 4, so that was a little bit of a surprise this morning. I was really happy to see that Nigel did use his shelter last night.
You hungry? Come on.
All of the horses do have full winter coats, and with it hovering just around freezing, these horses are actually quite warm. When I got to the barn this morning, most of the horses were just standing outside enjoying the cooler weather.
Go, Nigel. Zig!
While I wait to take Ziggy back to the vet to have his one tooth pulled, I am giving him a little bit of mash in the morning and at night. I made some really good gains with his body condition over the last couple of months, and I don't want him to start going downhill if he's having a little bit of pain with his tooth. Thankfully, it is still warm enough out for me to make the mash and let it sit overnight.
Come in, buddy. Frisco Bale?
I am super excited to see that Frisco is able to eat the new alfalfa hay that I got, so hopefully I'll be able to reduce the amount of mash that I have to feed him. Even though the temperature is a little bit cooler out, I still feel pretty comfortable with the amount of chores that I have to do every day to keep all of the horses happy and healthy. With Ziggy's tooth appointment being his last visit to the vet for a while, I consider his rehab finished at this point. Of course, there's always the possibility that there could be some complications with his tooth extraction. Right now, I am looking towards the future and getting a new horse in pretty soon. I think there's probably still a few of you that aren't quite sure exactly what I'm doing with these horses. Most of the ones I get in either have severe medical conditions or other training problems that need to be mitigated before they move on to their new homes. The last couple of years, I have taken on quite a few horses that really should not be rehomed due to some previous experiences they've had or some real trouble with their training. Although a lot of horses do really enjoy having a job, for some of these fragile-minded horses, living out in a herd with other horses and getting meals brought to them very consistently with access to top-notch veterinary and farrier care is a pretty good life. I'm extremely lucky that I can provide care for so many horses, because otherwise these guys would probably end up right back where I found them. One of the main motivations when I started this channel was to document how I get these at-risk horses going again, in the hopes that there are other like-minded people out there that would want to do something like this as well. One of the most satisfying parts of being able to do this work is when I have all of the horses happy and healthy, and the time comes for me to go out and find another horse in need that I can use my skills on. This year it just happens to be at the start of our winter, which takes a little bit more work, but I know there's going to be horses out there that definitely need a helping hand. In the last video, I did let you guys in on a little secret that I am bidding on a Mustang in this month's internet adoption. I have done a few of the makeovers in the past, and before I started rescuing these at-risk horses, it was something that I was pretty involved in. If I do win the bid on the Mustang I have my eye on, I probably won't be able to get any more rehab horses this year, so I'm kind of at a standstill for the next 24 hours to see what happens with that.
Let me see you. You cold? Okay, go in the truck. Come on.
Although Huckleberry really does like supervising me for the morning chores, he does get cold rather quickly this time of year.
Come on, come on.
His little jacket offers him some extra warmth, but after a while his paws get cold and I do have to put him back in the truck to warm up.
Hold on.
He typically lets me know when he's too cold to be outside, and he'll just take a nap in the truck until I'm done with all of my chores for the morning. I didn't want to get you guys too excited before I had all of my ducks in a row, but I did go in and order a gator yesterday. Hopefully it'll be here in a week or two, so until then I am stuck carting around all of the meals for the horses. It really isn't too bad. I have this sled that I can scoot around on top of the snow, and it really is just a little bit of extra work for me. I probably just should have bought one a long time ago, but there always seemed to be another horse that needed help or a veterinary bill that needed to be paid. But right now I'm in a pretty good spot, so the thought of spending a lot of money on a tool that I'll probably use every day is a little bit easier for me to wrap my head around. Because I don't have giant bags of YouTube money laying around just quite yet, I am financing it, and I calculated it out to $15 a day or $7.50 for each feeding, which I think in the long run is going to be worth it. I know a lot of you guys worry about me doing all of these chores by myself, but the truth is there are tons of people in Montana that do exactly what I'm doing. Part of the reason I'm able to afford so many horses is because I am very careful about how I spend my money. Knowing that you guys are addicted to seeing some of my horses now and will continue to watch me on YouTube does help a tremendous amount as well. Since it is quite a bit colder now, I have a feeling it's going to take me a while to get back into the groove of taking videos with my gloves on. Typically we get one big snowstorm and then it kind of melts off, and you have a second chance to kind of get ready for winter if there's things you forgot. Like I said earlier, it really isn't that cold out. We've got a little bit of crustiness on Whiplash's mane, but if you look at his thick winter coat, you can see that on top the snow is melting and then just running right off of his body, but underneath he is nice and dry. I know someone's going to make a comment about blankets, but this is really working as nature intended. As you can see back here, he is super dry even though the top of his coat is wet.
Hey, buddy. Stu.
If we look at Stewie, who does have a little bit longer of a coat since he is half Mustang, he is dry on his skin as well.
What happened? You okay, Pete?
Some of the horses definitely get a little bit cranky right at the start of winter, and Pete is one of those horses. On a typical day, Pete really isn't excited to see me, but when it's snowing out and he has to share the shed with the other horses, he gets a little extra grouchy.
Oh, shoot.
I completely forgot about this. I put a stall mat out that I had laying around down to see if it would work for me to feed the horses on, and with the snow, it got really slippery. Buddy. Typically, I do feed the horses off the ground. There's lots of benefits to it, and it is a lot less risky to having feeders out everywhere for the horses to get hurt on. Typically, I will use the hay nets for these guys, but it was a little bit windy this morning, and with them shaking around their nets, it does make a lot of the best parts of this alfalfa hay just blow away in the breeze. So a lot of times I'm going to feed them right on the ground in the winter. I had a few questions about how I keep my waterers from freezing over, and I do put tank heaters in every one. This place was laid out pretty good by the initial owner, so there's an outlet next to each one of the water spigots. Even though it does get really cold, I only use a 250 watt heater. They are the least expensive, and they do keep even the big tanks free from most of the ice for the majority of the winter.
Hi, Stewie. What is happening?
One thing that I usually do in the winter that I didn't get around to yet is cutting the horses' tails. I do make them pretty short just so they don't get ice balls and they don't accidentally step on them and rip out most of their tail like Pete usually does. It's not a big deal, but if I forget to do it, the horses will have pretty thin tails by the time summer rolls around. All of the horses also have access to shelter. I've got Scarlet in the barn. She actually hasn't wanted to go back in her stall since I put her in, but all of the horses can get into a shelter if they want to. This time of year, however, it's not really that cold, so they will just stand out in the snow. Typically, an unhandled horse that I buy would go right into my round pen. However, my new Mustang is going to have to go into one of the runs attached to the barn, so they do have shelter. Just like I did for Scarlet last year, I will have to put some panels around the inside of the run just to make sure that it is solid enough to hold a wild animal. With Nigel situated with his own personal shed, I also have a plain stall in the barn. When Scarlet was a tiny baby, I kept her inside a stall in the barn and then just opened the doors out to a little round pen I had set up for her. Because she was not full grown, this worked out really well, but if I were to get a full-size Mustang, I would have to get some taller panels. It's really not a big deal. There are several places around the barn that I could put a Mustang fresh out of the wild and it be safe and contained. If my quarantine facility had higher panels, that would work perfectly too. It would just be a little bit tricky for me to actually get the horse off the trailer into the pen because they are not halter broke. Even though we weren't supposed to get too much snow last night, it does appear that we got a significant amount of wind that blew snow inside these two stalls. Ziggy is not a very clean horse in his stall, so I'm going to have to fix this before I leave for the afternoon.
Ziggy. reach. Zig.
Living in a climate like this is not everybody's cup of tea. The last couple of months when I was throwing around the idea of getting a Mustang, I did go online just to see what some of my other Mustang trainer friends are doing. It does bum me out a little bit that most of them live in a climate that is much more conducive for training a freshly wild horse over the winter. The last time I had a Mustang for competition, I was living in southern Utah, so it was pretty nice even to work them through the whole entire winter. I think the last completely wild horse that I halter broke
What's
when there
wrong,
was snow
Zig?
on the ground was Goose,
wrong,
and
Ziggy?
that was not super fun. Even Ziggy, who is usually a pretty happy guy, was a little bit on the cranky side this morning. I finally had to take him off his own little tiny pasture and put him back in the stall, and I think he's a little bit upset about that. I think he might also be a tiny bit depressed because I haven't been working him lately. I just don't feel right about it given the fact that he's probably experiencing some kind of pain with his loose tooth. As you can tell from his very robust midsection, he is not having any trouble eating his food. Since he started getting the straight alfalfa though, he is kind of turning his nose up at the straight grass hay. I would like him to gain a little bit more muscle, but I think at this point going into winter, he does look really good. I think he'll be able to keep warm enough with his nice thick winter coat. I don't think I'm going to have to blanket him. Hopefully the fact that he does have access to a stall in the barn will help him keep a lot of the muscle mass that we've built up over the summer. He is basically on a free choice alfalfa hay now with his supplemental feed, so I think he's only going to get looking better and better over the winter. I did have to go out of town one day last week and I left my husband in charge of feeding all of the horses. He let me know that Ziggy was his new favorite horse, so there is a very slim chance that he is ever going to go anywhere. My husband doesn't ride anymore. He's not really into the horses, so when he tells me that one is his favorite, I kind of try a little bit harder to make sure they stick around. I'm really hopeful that after he's recovered from his tooth extraction, I'll be able to continue building up his muscle and get him ready for some fun things I have planned next spring. Scarlet has recently been more of a pain in my butt. She's definitely taken some moves out of Nigel's playbook. She's had access to this stall for the last couple of days, but she refuses to come back inside. I really try hard to set these horses up for success, but sometimes they just want to do their own thing. I know a lot of people don't really understand why I like doing so much work to care for my horses. I am keenly aware that this lifestyle is not for everyone. A typical horse person maybe has one or two animals that they spend all of their time with, but for me, I really enjoy rehabbing the ones that need a little extra effort. My goal isn't to do the least amount of work, it's to help the most horses that I possibly can. I've actually slowed down significantly since I've started my YouTube channel. It just takes a lot of time to put out these videos, so this year I've only actually purchased one new horse, which was Ziggy. Even though the weather is a little bit on the nasty side right now, I am planning on getting my next horse to rehab before the end of the year. I know this number of horses might be overwhelming for some people, but I have been doing this my entire life, so for me it's pretty normal. I've only got one more animal to check on before I leave for the afternoon, and that is Tiny.
Tiny. Tiny.
Tiny. Hi, girl. Sleeping, girl?
Over the years, I've tried to give Tiny access to fancy cat beds and heating pads, but more often than not, I just find her curled up on top of her hay. Even though I don't see Nigel standing in his little tent very often when I'm here, I do know he is using it quite a bit. I was a little bit worried that he wasn't going to use it, but I think now that he knows it's safe to go inside and I've made a few modifications to it, he does enjoy it a lot. I was not too happy when I saw him using it for a scratcher as I was heading out this morning. Hopefully this thing will last the winter, but I'm not going to hold my breath quite yet. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.